I'm trying to think of ways to mechanically trigger a switch when my sourdough starter in a jar rises up to a certain point. But I have no idea how hard it can push before it just kind of doesn't push anymore. So I have a tiny little moment switch here, and I figured out just by putting it on my kitchen scale and pushing down on it a billion times that it takes about 130 to 150 grams of force to activate that switch. So I'm going to make two rigs. One is going to be just as lightweight as I can and not using a switch, and maybe just like it'll have a metal contact on top so that when it rises and pushes up, it'll just close a contact. The other one I'm going to make the exact same way, but then add 150 grams of weight to it to see if it could push up enough to potentially trigger the little switch and do it that way. So it turns out 150 grams is a lot of weight. So I'm going to abandon the switch idea because I just don't think I'll be able to create enough force to trigger any pre-made switch. So I'm just going to kind of make my own, but I still want to see some data. So I'm going to take this rig like so. I have the absolute lightest that I was able to come up with, which weighs in at about 6 grams with the wire. There we go. And this will have some kind of a standing contact here, so when this rises to a certain point, it'll close that. Okay, so I've got my test rig set up and shooting a little time lapse just for fun. The one on the far left is the control, which is just no load, and we're waiting for it to rise. It started at the black mark and it's just started to rise now. And you can see there's a gap between the top of the sourdough and the plungers. I just want to let it rise on its own before it gets to near where I want it to set off the trigger, and then see if it can lift a 6 gram or 49 gram load. I also ran a couple of tests just with a 9-volt battery and a voltmeter to see how conductive the sourdough would be, because I had an idea to do just like 2 contacts coming down, and when it came up across the contacts, it would set off this like little buzzer speaker that I found, like that. That's not going to work. Sourdough has a lot of resistance. Like when the 2 contacts were more than half a millimeter apart, I was getting like mega ohms of resistance, and yeah, just not enough to get that little speaker to go off a 9-volt battery. So to do it that way, I would have to have like some kind of a relay, and just if there's any power getting through, then it would open up the 9-volt to the thing. But now we're getting into electrical engineering, which I'm not supposed to do on this project yet. So we're gonna keep it simple and really now focus in on the plunger idea, and hopefully my time lapse comes out cool. Well, you'll see it right now. So time lapse is kind of fun. At the start it went really slow, but once it started expanding, it goes pretty quick. I was really surprised when I saw the one on the right, when it made contact, it just started pushing up and it didn't seem like there was any resistance at all. So I popped back in here and I set up this little test rig with the same moment switch from earlier to see if it was strong enough to actually push that switch. It was, but then you can see as soon as there was too much resistance, it just started spilling up around the side of the plunger here. I'm honestly pretty surprised with those results. At the very start, I had this preconceived notion that the best method was going to be having the 2 electrical like probes coming down, and when the sourdough hit them, it would close a circuit, but that turned out to actually be not the highest mountain peak that I could have found, as Mark would say, and I'm glad I tested the plunger idea, which I didn't think was going to work at all, because I didn't think there'd be enough uplift force, but it turns out there's tons of uplift force, and like, yeah, well over 200 grams before it started spilling out over the side of the plunger. So I can remake this rig now with some more food safe materials, silicone, plastic. I can make maybe the parts threaded so that I can take them apart for easy cleaning. But yeah, really excited about how that went and the stuff that I learned. Oh, and as an added bonus, I get 3 loaves of bread tonight.